today I'm excited to have a special guest, Ana Diogo-Drpaer, who is here from Artesa Winery, and of course our industry analyst, the famous Jacques Brix.
Came back to haunt you.
Yes. So Jacques will be joining us today, and we are very excited about the fact that you're from Portugal and have an interesting background, and you are doing a fantastic job of representing, I think, one of the finest wineries in Napa Valley.
Oh, thank you. Thank you
So we're
so
happy to have you
much.
here, and you'll be excited about this. We have some Albarino open.
Wow, that's my favorite for breakfast.
Well, thank you. It's a pleasure to be here on this beautiful summer afternoon. And I can't wait to share all the stories about our wines with you guys.
Oh, good. Okay, let's taste the Albarino, Jacques. Tell me what you think. Oh, that smells delightful.
Yes.
It's got more of the apricot, sort of stone fruit.
A little bit
characteristics.
floral too. There's some kind of hibiscus, not hibiscus, jasmine blossom. There's a little bit of those floral notes too. And it's one of the things during the winemaking process I really strive to achieve is that intense aromatic profile on the whites particularly. I think part of it is like European training and I think in Europe that part in the whites of the aromatic intensity, I feel it's so pronounced. It's such a big part of it that I.
Is there a lot of Albarino being grown here?
In California, more and more, I believe. We are actually expanding the acres we have planted on our estate. Currently, the wine is made from fruit from the estate and fruit that we purchase in a vineyard we've worked with for a long time in Courtyard.
So this is both estate and on estate?
Estate and on estate.
And for those of you who aren't aware of what estate means, estate is much more prevalent in Napa Valley than it is in Sonoma County. And basically an estate vineyard is where the winery owns the vineyard. And it's considered probably, it's more prestigious because you know that the winery is carefully farming for their own product and not relying on an outside source.
And in the label, I mean, in the U.S., the term reserve.
Most people, even Matt calls me Ana.
I thought it was Ana, but it's not Ana either, is it?
Ana. The winery controls 100% of the
And
production.
estate is one of the, definitely one of the legitimate.
Yeah, I agree.
Which
I
is very
agree.
dedication.
I agree because not only you farm, but you produce, you bottle, and you see in the back of the bottle, right? Estate produced, grown, and bottled. So I think when you see that in the back label, you know for sure. And in most of the wines, we do make a lot of estate wines, and the goal eventually is that the Los Carneros Albarino will be 100% estate. We also do a small bottling of our own estate Albarino. We do about 250 cases that is 100% fermented in concrete.
Now, would that be considered your reserve?
A sort of a reserve, yeah. So it's a higher tier Albarino, and we start working with concrete. There's a little bit of concrete in this Albarino.
Concrete's a big thing right now. A lot of winemakers have come on and talk about.
I love it.
They're
I'm
proud
in
of
love.
their concrete. Tell people why you love concrete so much.
I really feel it enhances the terroir. My approach to winemaking, I call it component winemaking. I love kind of, even in the estate, kind of dissect the blocks and play with them and find out, you know, which each one gives us. And when we first got the tanks, we did several trials, particularly with Chardonnay, but also with Albarino, and fermenting the same fruit in concrete, in oak, and in stainless. The best wine to me is the combination of all three because each gives it something. There's a minerality that concrete gives you. It's obviously increases pH. The pH of the wines fermented in concrete tend to have slightly higher than the ones fermented in oak or in
You mean post-fermentation? It tends
post-fermentation,
to push the
yeah,
pH.
considerably higher. And then the just the temperature retention. For instance, I ferment, like I said, while it's very cold. The wine, the Albarino, we fermented in concrete that year. It took almost 60 days to finish fermentation.
Now, I have a question as a winemaker. I'm taking advantage of you being here right now. But, so if the fermentation process in concrete will increase the pH, is your goal to pick at higher TAs or higher acidity? There's an inverse relationship
Yes.
between pH and TA. But do you still pick based on flavor?
Still based on flavor. I still want that. I love that natural acidity, but again, that Carneros, that specific, we call it pyramid block, is 100% concrete. But in this one, I do put, there's about 2% that I ferment in neutral pungent barrels, so 500 liter bigger volume barrels, just to kind of round the back palate. But there's absolutely no oak character, but I like a little bit of it. And then the combination of concrete and stainless, and again, the goal really is to.
Sorry, I'm going to give you some ice here. The goal is to. Sorry.
No, not at all.
And the concrete, is it like rectangular, or is it the eggs, or is it the
we
fancy?
use rectangulars. We have 2 rectangulars, and then we have 5 small ones. They're called. I don't know if I can do publicity. We work with Sonoma stone,
Oh,
so
that's
they're
fine.
based out of Petaluma, and they have these barrels, these small concrete tanks called new barrels, and they are worth 266 gallons, so four barrels. And I work with that size, and I have one that is 600 gallons, and I have a bigger one at 750.
Well, not small. Just keep it like 266 gallons is only, what, like
1,000 bottles, 12
Yeah,
minutes,
roughly,
So it's
roughly.
small.
For fermenting reds, it's too little. You can't put more than half a ton in those little ones, but for whites, they're perfect. They don't have temperature control. They're easy to move, so it's a good, for someone who's trying, or a winemaker trying to get into trying concrete, that's a great way to start. I started mainly for reds and Pinot, but then in 19, the year we got in, we actually fermented some Cabernet, and the results were incredible. I really, really liked, and that's when I bought the bigger one that has a ginormous lid where we can do punch downs, and we ferment. It's only for reds. We do Cabs, Tempranillo, we do Pinot Noir first, and I just there's an expression of terroir in the wines fermented in concrete that I really like.
This is really delicious.
Oh, thank you.
Very delicious. And you started working with them in 2013.
Yes.
And now my second question is, were you the person who were they already using concrete when you got there?
No. I was the
So
one
you were the one
that started. They used a concrete. I think 18 was the first thing. 2018.
Well, that says a lot about you, and I say that because I remember when it was Cordonu.
Oh, really?
Oh, yes, that was a long time ago.
It's our 30th anniversary this year,
Is
actually.
it?
Yeah, because the winery was founded as Cordonu Napa in 1991.
I actually went on my dad passed away in 97, but I remember in, I think 93 or 94 going on a tour with my parents.
Oh,
but it was a beautiful facility then, and now it's arguably one of the most beautiful properties.
Yeah, it's gorgeous.
We
went through an extensive remodel at the visitor center 4 years ago and really changed it. Very modern, but our motto is born in Barcelona, raised in Napa Valley, and we really embrace our Spanish heritage, producing on the estate Albarino. We have Tempranillo planted on the estate too now. And today we're actually celebrate the 30th anniversary, releasing a latest scorch.
Oh, here we have footage of the winery.
Oh, gorgeous!
It's so beautiful.
Wow.
Have you been? Oh.
Yes.
So these are I just met recently, but wow, that is absolutely beautiful.
Yeah, that's the entrance.
I've been there when it was Cordonu.
Yes, me too. Me as well.
Infinity pools.
Wow, that's really beautiful.
Yeah, the view is absolutely amazing. You can overlook the San Pablo Bay from the bay. from the terrace where we hold a lot of the tastings on a clear day. You can see San Francisco.
Well, and during COVID, you had plenty of outdoor space, which is nice.
Yes, we were able to increase the outdoor capability, and the County of Napa showed great.
And the location is perfect because whether you're in Sonoma or Napa, it's easily accessible.
Yes, absolutely.
It's sort of
yeah.
in between.
Yes, we're on the edge of. Carneros is such a unique AVA because you can actually combine fruit from the Napa and the Sonoma side, and we're on the edge of after the hill after the vineyard, past the vineyard is already the Sonoma side, so we're right on the edge of the Napa side of Los Carneros.
So I'm going to go back to the point I was about to make when I was talking about Artesa. It's so fabulous that you already have a fingerprint on the winery because you developed new techniques
Yes.
for the brand that will obviously be there.
The biggest change I did was the first year. So I was there in 2013. I was promoted to director of winemaking in 2015, and that first vintage, I changed the Pinot Noirs right away to be fermented. All our state vineyard Pinot was done with native fermentations, and ran trials on the Chardonnay. And the year after, we did the same for the Chardonnay. So all our estate wines, Chards and Pinots, are done using native fermentation. And that was a very big
And you were the
stylistic
first person
change.
to do that?
We did very slightly, very little, but they were my favorite wines every year. And I'm very you try it, but as a winemaker, at a point you gotta commit, right?
Yep.
You run trials, but then it's like, okay, if it works, then let's just dive in and do it.
So when you made this decision, did you present the idea to the owners, or did they just say, Anna, do whatever you want to do, no problem?
Not so much freedom. We have a director, so the Codorniu family, so they're the oldest winemaking family in Spain. They've been making wine since 1551. They're now the 18th generation of the same family that owns the business. And we have a director of winemaking that manages or directs winemaking for all the wineries in the group, which is fantastic. We have winemaker meetings, we have trials we do here, replicate in Rioja, we have a winery in Argentina, and then we sit down for a week and just taste these trials and learn and geek on them, and it's really fun. And he was here at the time. He was based out of California during that time that I took over the winemaking, and it was a very joint effort. I mean, it was we talked about it, tasting the wines, and if anything, he was the one that kind of gave me that push and said, "You can do it." I mean, there's no doubt in your mind that these wines are so much better than the same block fermented as native and not. The quality was so different, and year after year we kept seeing that. I did do trials in the Chardonnays because I wasn't so sure, but I did it that first vintage, and the results again were astonishing. And then the next year, I just dove into it. So the two Chards, the Chard and Pinot we'll taste today, they're both 100% native ferments.
Well, what I love about this is there are so many winemakers, especially in corporate situations, who are told this is the way we do it, this is the way we're going to do it, and the fact that they give you so much creativity and that you have a team to experience
it's fantastic.
That's just a fabulous situation.
It is. It's wonderful.
I'm excited just tasting things. I think it's...
It was one of the reasons I really wanted to go to Artesa was the diversity of wines that we make. That really, once you start that working harvest, it's the longest harvest under the sun, as I always say, because we make anywhere from sparkling wine to mountain Cabernet, so we have a really long, busy harvest.
So Anna starts harvest in July, I assume.
This year for sure.
And can possibly be done just with the harvesting in early November.
Yes.
And things are still in tanks. So
Yes.
that means that you probably get to take a vacation in late February.
Well, I always take 2 weeks off for Christmas.
Nice.
I'm like... I always take a break for a Christmas break, and then come back in January and power through. But the crew, we're tired of each other at that point because we've been together. You know how harvest is. You're more time with your team than with your family, and by that time I need to be. I'm missing my kids and my family too. So it's really great. We close the production closes for 2 weeks. We kind of have the end of the year reset, and then we come in January fully ready for the new year.
Don't you think that's also sort of a European thing to
Yes.
close the facility? I don't think people do it as much here as they probably should.
To take what? To do that?
To close the facility and understand there's a break.
Yeah, the U.S. is not well known for that.
No, I'm serious.
No, Europe,
I haven't
yeah,
closed
sure,
my
every other week.
Yeah. I know a lot of the wineries, for instance, in our group in Spain, they close in the summer for 2 to 3 weeks, and they're MIA.
Now, it's fascinating to me, too, that you're from Spain.
From Portugal.
You're from Portugal. Oh, Spain, excuse me. So
No, you're fine.
But you're from Portugal, and how did they find you? Weren't you at Rutherford?
Yeah, so I came as an intern. I did an internship in Rutherford Hill in 2004, and at the time I really loved winemaking. I was very passionate about it, but being a woman in Portugal, it was not easy. And I was very ambitious. I knew, for women in the industry there, you kind of was okay. Women make it in the lab, but then to grow, if your family didn't own a vineyard or a winery, which mine doesn't, it's very hard to reach the top.
So you felt as a female in Portugal, it might
very
be
complicated, and that pushed me aside. In my degrees in agriculture engineering, and the reason why is that I knew I wanted to be connected to agriculture. I wasn't sure why. I worked in honey beekeeping for a while, or teaching classes. I did different things, and my heart was in winemaking, but I was like, do I really want to do that jump? And then when I came in 2004, I worked with these incredible women. Marisa Taylor was still the winemaker there.
Nice.
Became very good friends. Elizabeth Viana was part of also the group of wineries that Rutherford Hill belongs to. And I was just so taken by these. Sorry.
Oh, this is our planned slip wine.
Love it. And to see these two young women that just show me how it was possible to do it and to be at the top of your profession, it really motivated me, and I think that's when I really made the decision that I wanted to do it. But I returned to Portugal to write my thesis, and
Oh, yes, thank you. Yes, of course I want to
Yeah, I
try
looked
it.
at your glass and gosh, you
I
need
was being,
more
I was
self.
being polite.
Oh, well, never mind.
Well, the concept of women helping women in a very male-dominated industry is fabulous.
it is absolutely incredible.
That's super.
Yeah. And I think California is ahead, even though things might not always feel that parity is here. I can guarantee you it's light years ahead of Europe. Even now, I think Europe's come a long way. I've been here for over 15 years. There's been definitely a big change, but not as much as to the extent that we see here. For
Do you
sure.
think? So you think women are further ahead in the industry in California?
for sure. Even though we feel like we're not there where we wanted to be, there's definitely. But at the same time, I'm super proud to work in a company where, in our group, for instance, there's as many females as are winemakers in the group. So, and that was a big thing for that sense of parity within the company, and that's very refreshing too. But when I go back, I still feel that there's still a lot to be done. I feel in Europe, particularly Southern Europe.
Interesting. Okay, I will start appreciating what we have in California from a female perspective. That's fabulous. Okay, the next wine we are about to try. Have you tasted it yet, Jacques?
Yes, I have.
So
It's
this is
the-
our Block 92, and it's State Vineyard, highest elevation Chardonnay block on the property. Like I said, 100%. 92 comes from the year it was planted. It was in 1992.
Oh, I was wondering that.
Yeah, so we call it Selection 92. We're actually actively in the middle of replanting, redeveloping the vineyard, and some of these older blocks are now being replanted. These are still there. They're north faced, so protected from more direct sunlight. So we're able to get nice ripeness, but still really.
But they're only
pretty
20-some
acidity.
years old?
They're 29 years old, so planted
that's-
in 1992.
Yeah, that's replanting. I mean, it costs so much to
Yes.
redo it. That's-
Yes, we're slowly doing it. and it's fun because now we farmed the property for 30 years, so we kind of know what works, doesn't work. We actually added some Cabernet on the property too. The highest ridges of the property are on the edge of Mount Veeder, so within the Mount Veeder AVA. I just blended the first vintage of our estate Cabernet, and I'm so excited. It's
that's exciting.
really, really fantastic. Yeah.
Now, this Chardonnay is delicious. And I am a known, actually Jacques too. Jacques and I are Chardonnay snobs. And I know you like this.
Oh yeah, because
we've
I've got the
tasted
inside
Chardonnays
scoop.
together.
Because our builder is her brother-in-law.
Wow.
So
Small
it's
town, you have to like these small communities.
So we get some,
It's
and
delicious.
it's, yeah, love it.
It has a unique spicy characters.
I find also in our estate we get, I think probably or is the proximity of the day. There's a natural salinity to these wines that I really appreciate.
Like from the ocean air.
That I really appreciate. And what I think distinguishes our test is we're right on the back of the Los Carneros, one of the highest altitude vineyards. Only 400. I think our highest block is at 420 feet of elevation, which is not mountain high, but it is for Carneros.
It's high.
And I really think there's a very particular terroir in that part of Los Carneros, where Hudson is next door to us. We have high Truchard, and the soils are much more the volcanic soils, right? Especially where our test is, we're on the edge of the Mayacamas, and we have It is a complicated vineyard to farm. I mean, we have 5 ridges on the property. I call it an accordion estate. It's expensive to farm. It's challenging to farm. It's hard to do any mechanization. Most of the labor has to be done manually. Harvest has to be done manually. So there's a lot of work that goes into it. What we see is a lot of concentration of flavor, small clusters, very small berries, lower yields. And then one of the other things I've done is I think I'm picking probably 2 to 3 weeks earlier than we have historically done. And again, I think there's this natural acidity that comes through that I really try to
So
capture. in the
when
wine.
you came on board, you changed that as well.
Yes. And the oak, I mean, this wine used to have, I think it was 50 or 60% new oak. Now we only do about 25%, and it's not even all barrel fermented. There's barrel, tank, and concrete. There's a combination of 3. And I always try to tweak, and it's all fermented in pungent barrels. So that was another change that I did. I work a lot with pungents, even in the Pinots we ferment directly.
In the larger.
Yeah, we take on the Pinot, we take the barrel head off and ferment it, put it upright and ferment directly.
Yeah, Anna's talking about the larger
Yeah.
engines. So they're
132, 500 liters.
Michael thinks we may have some photos of that, perhaps.
Oh, yes. Oh,
Yeah.
I did. Yes.
we'll
we have.
see.
We have.
And they're the reason you don't see them very frequently is because, first of all, they're expensive. That they do.
When you think about it, they're almost twice as much than a regular Bordeaux or Burgundy barrel.
Oh, look! Good job, Michael.
On cue. I'm
Oh,
impressed.
wow, okay.
Yeah, so that's kind of our row of fermentations. We do quite a lot.
So the grapes are fermenting in the barrel during harvest.
Yes.
And what varietal is this?
Everything. Under
Everything.
The sun. We
So
do
it's
mainly
not just Chardonnay.
We started with Pinots, so those are all reds. We do Chardonnays, but obviously they're not upright. We started with Pinots, and then I started venturing, and currently we do all our Petit Verdot and pungents. We do quite a lot of Tempranillo, Cabernets
It's a
too.
lot of work.
It is a lot of work. We only do these on these higher tier wines, but it's a great thing to have when you have these years of really excess fruit and you just run out of, you're expecting 5 tons and you get 8, and you're only counting to put in the 5-tonner. What do I do with these 3 tons? Well, it's perfect. This is a great block. Let's put it in these 3 tons in pungents.
And so you not only do you have a place to put it, but then you have higher quality.
And a very different
Excess.
component. And I think what happens, this is my theory, is that there's an extraction, the fermentation curve. Obviously, we can't control it. We don't have tank net or something like that in the pungent. But we monitor each one of them individual, and you have to do so because each behaves like its own individual
so Anna's saying
fermenter.
that because there's no refrigeration like a tank.
Yes.
And so that don't have the ability to heat or cool them.
Yes. So,
So they're-
that photo
they're
is in
just-
the barrel room.
So they're
But it's
just
cool.
operating on their own accord.
Yes.
Basically.
So they run very wild. Each one, some
Yeah.
can finish a week before the next. But there is an extraction. I think there's once at the height of fermentation, there's an extraction cone because you can't control temperature. They really sometimes go up to 90, 96, 97 degrees, and then we try to pull it down and do punch downs. But that extraction, that curve, that extraction that happens, I just feel it gives it this structure that is absolutely incredible. And then there's oak integration. For Pinot particularly, one of the reasons I do it too is that you also seasoning the barrel. And so those more raw tannins that you get from a brand new barrel are taken in the fermentation. And so once harvest is over, we put the barrel heads back on, we sanitize the barrel, and then when you age in those barrels, especially for Pinot Noir, Carneros Pinot Noir, that's so delicate, I feel like there's a much better oak integration that happens with those new barrels.
Did this start because you had excess fruit and needed a place to ferment it? Or is
We
this
did
just
it.
a traditional?
That was already happening when I started, but we only did a couple of lots. This Pinot with taste was the only one that we did, and we did maybe 6 or 7. And then again, I went crazy and said, "No, we need to expand this. These wines are incredible. We can do so much more." And it depends. Labor is becoming more complicated. We're having a hard
Labor
time.
is an issue.
Yeah, I'm finding interns, so I really, before I would just, let's just do it, the heck with it. And now I'm much more cautious, and we really do it on the lots that I feel that are worth doing.
Yes, the labor and the lack of interns, all of that is having a pretty large impact
Very
on
much
our
so.
industry.
Very much so.
Yeah, what's happening? Because it seems the labor which should have come back is not.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, I think it shows how dependent we were on foreign interns, like I came.
yeah.
We hire, a lot of our interns come from Europe, from Argentina, from Australia, New Zealand, and currently the borders are closed and those visas aren't being and it really shows how dependent we were, wineries, on a lot of these foreign interns. They are specialized. I mean, these, men and women, some of them, they're professional at this. They go from Southern Hemisphere,
Exactly.
Northern Hemisphere.
Professional interns.
Professional interns. Harvest hoppers, I like to call them.
Harvest hoppers, that's right.
It's a great lifestyle. We work harvest, you go travel, then you go to the other hemisphere, work a few more months.
Oh, God.
It's a lifestyle.
Yeah, from the outside looks
Yeah,
great.
but they're very passionate.
You have to
If
be
you're 20 years old, it's okay,
Well,
right?
you certainly. Yes, like Nick Goldschmidt's son was on here, and he's a harvest hopper. But it's also given him the opportunity to not only learn the world, but he's also studied under very unique and very winemaking situations.
Winemaking, yeah. But I always tell them, when you do harvest and you don't follow up throughout the year, you only see a part of the picture because you've abandoned ship when these wines go to barrel, get aged. So if you want to learn and become a winemaker, you got to see.
Get the whole
You got to
cycle.
see the whole. You got to stay. You got to see what happens. That's important too. And there is a ha-ha moment when you see a whole year or 18 months in the Cabernet, that development of a wine in barrel. I feel like
Yeah, that's a really good point.
you learn so much.
I had
from
not
that.
thought about your.
So when you came as an intern. Did you go back to Portugal?
I did. I had to finish school. I had to write my thesis and finish school. And then there was a person managing the lab at Rutherford Hill, and she had left, and they were amazing. They sponsored my visa, and they invited me to come. And at the time, I'm finishing school. I fell in love with California. I
Were
really
you
did.
there originally as an intern?
Yes, as an intern. Yeah, but I had an amazing internship because I was in the cellar, then I was in the lab, so I really was exposed to everything. And I had a long internship. I think I was there for almost 5 months. And when I returned, I thought I would be here for a year or two, get experience, and then do a little bit of the harvest hopping. But then I met my husband.
Oh, that's
and
what
never,
happened.
and never left.
That's a good reason to stop harvest hopping. Now, I know we have a Portugal map that we can look at. It'd be fun to see where
Love
you're
to.
from.
Of course.
Yeah, because I couldn't remember which area of Portugal you came from.
So I was born and raised in.
Okay, so here's our
So
map.
that's the big one. Yeah, so that's
So
big.
Portugal,
Tiny little country.
Tiny little country on the edge.
Farthest west of Europe,
Yes,
right?
the farthest west point of Europe is,
Yeah,
is,
western
in, is
point,
in,
Europe,
in
yeah.
Portugal.
So Spain on the right, France above it, and Italy and stuff. And then there should be another one.
Okay,
Unless,
now we're in,
here
now
it
we're in the
goes.
north.
So in the north, so you have the Douro River, obviously where port wine comes from. So and incredible still wines are being made in the Douro. Absolutely
Yeah, we don't know
incredible,
as much.
incredible price point, quality, just really spectacular. They come a long way.
And that's the river Douro, right? That
Yes,
goes.
so it starts in Spain and
Yeah.
it ends in Porto.
And Anna, just quickly, are the wines that you're talking about, I know they're good price, are those wines that consumers can buy in the United States?
Absolutely,
There's
yeah.
some good
I think
producers
Portuguese
there.
wines, I feel, are really booming here in Sonoma County, where we are. Bottle Barn is a great selection
That's,
of
I was going to
Portuguese
say it, but I
wines.
didn't want to promote them.
Yeah.
Unless they send us a check.
Oh, no.
No, you're right, yeah.
We love Bottle Barn.
They do have a great
Love
selection
them.
of Portuguese wines. K&L in the city too. So there's a lot, and even online, I know there's smaller distributors that you can find. And
What's
there-
what's the primary varietal for this?
Tempranillo, which in
Tempranillo.
the north of Portugal is called Tinta Roriz, and in the south it's called Aragonês. So the same
Yeah, we
varietal
won't
is
remember,
exactly
but
the
that's
same. So two different names. We can call it Tempranillo. Touriga Nacional, obviously, one of the most well-known varieties, I think, in Portugal. And then you have Touriga Franca, Tinta Cão. I mean, there's Portugal is I think the country in the world that is for the area more autochthony varietals. That have been identified and genetically mapped out. So there's too many almost.
So did you make any port?
No, not in Portugal. I made
Not in
port.
Portugal.
I made port when I got here.
Actually,
Not in
we have
Portugal.
some, just because Jacques and I are both intrigued by Portugal, I think we have some other areas of Portugal. If you could take us on a
Of course.
little tour.
And then right above the door, oh, this is down. So right above the door is where the Vinho Verde is. And Vinho Verde is mainly Albarino, and it's a very low alcohol wine that can have some carbonation to it. And you can find they're great price.
And that's on that was on in the northern
Up in the
area.
northern part. Here you're in the center, so
Okay,
yes.
so this is
North,
okay.
yeah.
So it's
Michael went back
Minho
to
Lima,
north.
because right above Portugal there is Galicia, and that's where Albarino is very well known. Rias Baixas,
Spain,
Albarino in Spain. And this area here up north, closer to the ocean, you see that green, that greenness there. It's cooler, wetter. And they make this Vinho Verde, which is 11% alcohol. It's like the perfect summer wine because you can drink a lot, a lot of it. And some of it traditionally it's carbonated, and so there's a slight spritz to it.
Like naturally?
The more modern one, no, not naturally. The more modern ones are completely still, but it's I think, and I've said this many times. I think where Portugal is missing the boat in the U.S. market. Because only the lower, the base wines make it here, and there's really great quality vineyards to be done.
Now, maybe look at the
Sure,
southern
sure.
part of Portugal now. Yeah, the south, Mike.
Yeah, Lisboa or
Lisboa.
Lisboa?
Okay, here's the very south.
So we're right on the south.
Yeah.
Can we go up just a little bit? So the Algarve is this area we're in here. So
Here.
this is Lisboa is where I'm from.
Oh.
And then I studied and lived in Évora, and this is the Alentejo region. Porto Alegre is where my parents are from. And the Alentejo region, which is Évora and Porto Alegre, that area there near the border, is where the cork forests are.
Oh.
Portugal.
Amorem is the biggest, right? Is Amorem the
Amorim,
largest cork
yes,
maker
but
in the world, I think. and
they're
starting
huge, yeah, and they own some sub companies too
Yes.
that produce here. And that's where I went to school, where I lived in Évora in the Alentejo. But the Lisbon region, there's really wonderful wines being made in that area too. And then as you go down in the Algarve now, there's some new varietals and new. It's kind of the new hipster area of Portugal because I don't know, 20 years ago there wasn't really a wine industry down there, and it's really taking off. And then you have the islands on the left,
Yeah,
Madeira,
yeah.
which Madeira wine, obviously. I'm more for Madeira almost than
love
port
Madeira.
wine. I love Madeira too.
I love Madeira.
And the Azores are now doing amazing, very kind of hipster orange wines. They do these verdeos that you actually can find them at bottom. They have one there that's really
Bottled
interesting.
by day.
And it's incredible because Portugal is the size of the state of Indiana, and for a country so small, there's a lot of geographical and climatic diversity.
That's crazy to think about.
Yeah,
It's the size of
it's
it.
very small. 10 million, 11.
Yeah,
I think
11
we're 11
million
million
right
now.
now,
But it's very small, and just the diversity you have from north to south, from more interior to more coastal, because the Atlantic influence it's pretty big on these regions closer to the coast. But there's so much diversity. I think a lot to learn too, and I know the wines of Portugal, they're doing such a big job really trying to, particularly in the American market, to really, publicize and educate people, because it's hard. And these varietals, they're hard to say, to understand. There's so many of them, and like in the Douro, you have vineyards planted that they don't even know what is planted in them. They're field blends that have been planted hundreds of years ago. These old wine vineyards.
Well, then do they have what we call fanciful names for them?
They're just red wines. They do. Some of them do. And some of the more expensive, well-known ones are made in some of these vineyards where they're not quite sure what is being planted and grown there.
Would you like to try some Pinot?
Oh, I'm sorry.
Oh, no. Oh, no, here.
I'm not going to
Finish
throw it
it.
away. Come on.
I know. Jacques is such a team player. He's very polite that way.
Oh, look at that. I'm shaking. God.
In excitement.
It's,
Yes.
oh, that's what it is.
Anticipation of this
Yeah.
beautiful
Plus, it's
wine.
101 degrees. Just so that our viewers can understand. It's warm down here right now.
Oh, come on, it's perfect. We want the tourists to come visit us.
Yes.
So
It's a
it's
beautiful
perfect. 100
day.
degrees is perfect. Look at that.
It always cools down at night here, remember?
Yes.
It's not like
Well,
being in,
that's-
I was recently in Texas. It stays hot in places like that.
Yes.
Okay, this is the 2018, and Anna brought us another estate grown, produced, and bottled wine. And by the way, the wines that we are tasting today are all only consumer direct.
Yes.
So the only way, these aren't distributed, so the only way consumers can get these wines is by ordering them
Online.
online.
Or at the wine, or come and
Or-
see us
yeah,
at the
so
winery.
visiting. And so this is, we were talking earlier, I think we saw a photograph of the Pinot
Yes.
fermenting
Yeah.
in the barrel.
Yeah.
And
In the pungent. So that's a component of this wine is probably 30 to 40% done in pungents and the rest in small open top fermenters. It's called Selection 91. It used to be called Block 91D, but during the replanting, the block disappeared and we actually canceled this,
So then the
this
D-
bottling for a year, and the wine club
the,
members
The D
started-
finally meant something.
Yes. And the wine club members, it was a mini revolution because this is one of our oldest estate wines we make at Artesa. And they were furious that we canceled this wine. And so we brought it back as Selection 91 as an homage. It's still a Martini clone, which is that block, until that block, which we replanted with the same Martini clone. Once it comes into production, which will be in 2 years, then hopefully we can go back to call it our Block 91D, even though now we only call it Selection 91. But we had to bring it back in some form. And Martini clone, for me, it's one of my favorite selections in our estate, and I think in Carneros.
Is that from Louis Martini?
Yes. And it's beautiful. There's
It's
this
hard
floral.
to find, actually. It's
Yes.
not as common as one would think.
Well, the Dijons, I think, became this very popular Dijon clones, which we do. We have some Dijon on the property too, and so I think they really took over. And Martini was kind of that blast from the past. But I'm old school. I like to bring these things back, and I really love it. And when we're doing
That's good.
selections, we're playing with Wadenswil. We're actually planting different clones. Pinot World is, you get good clones. In Spain, when I go there and taste with the other winemakers, this clonal selection is so foreign to them.
Oh, because they're used to
they're just, no one really.
planted.
Yeah,
That's
yeah.
funny.
and here it's such a big drive. But I really love this wine. There's an elegance, but an exuberance at the same time.
It's elegant, but it's also
Yeah.
substantial.
Yeah,
Yeah,
there's a
it's
nice.
major
It's
body.
not-
Yeah,
Yeah,
and I
it's
think a
weighty.
lot of it is from the pungent fermentation. It gives it that structure, that roundness in the mid palate that I really enjoy. Still respecting that it is Pinot Noir. My goal is never to over extract. Or I always say, if you want a big wine, you should be drinking Pinot, right? You should be drinking something else.
But it still it does have, it's weighty. I mean, I just love it. And truly, Carneros tends to be a different. We're sitting in Russian River right now, of course, but Carneros is different from Russian River Valley in that it can be, I think, more elegant,
Yes, more delicate.
more
Yeah.
delicate. But this
Yeah.
is not delicate. It's more
No, it's
substantial.
powerful. It's concentrated.
It is.
Yeah, and I think a lot of it is also the site. I think our estate. I was saying that the small clusters, the small berries, really gives you natural concentration. I try again to pick a little earlier. I always say with Pinot, if it tastes ripe in the vineyard, we're picking too late. It's almost like this sweet spot when it's almost ready to pick. You got to pick it before because the goal is never to be overripe or too high in alcohol and keep that delicacy.
Well, I agree with you, and part of the challenges with this labor shortage is making sure that you don't. I mean, the worst thing you can do with Pinot is pick too late.
Yeah,
And
absolutely. Absolutely.
you never want pruniness or anything like that. And so, a lot of winemakers are finding themselves in the position that they really have to make choices in advance, and we used to be able to just give 24 hours notice.
Yeah, and not
But now-
anymore. Now sometimes I feel, 72 hours is not enough. That people are,
Oh, no.
and I think this year, because with the drought, I think we're going to see lower yields on a lot of varietals, and with the heat, if we do have the weather keeps this way, it's probably going to be, we're going to see numbers moving and flavors moving much quicker than in a regular, what we call a regular year. So I think winemakers this year, in my opinion, really have to be, which is even worse because the labor shortage, and you have to be sampling things. Because I feel like in 2-3 days they can really shift.
Oh,
Maybe not
absolutely.
in flavor, but in sugar they can really spike.
Well, don't you feel like you could be a professional weather person during
Yeah, oh
harvest?
gosh, yes.
If
Yes.
there's rain coming,
Yes.
if there's...
I have apps, I have podcasts.
Study the weather.
Yes, you become a weather specialist, anticipating weeks ahead. Okay, I see something.
It's crazy.
It is. It's
Predicting
insane.
weather. How many cases of this varietal do you make?
Of this bottling, it varies. It's very vintage driven. I think in 18 yields were good. I think we probably did around 500 cases when yields are smaller or the quality is not there. These single vineyard wines are very quality and vintage driven. So anywhere from 200 to 800 cases, depending on the quality and what we feel.
And how about the sparkling? Is it still continuing?
Oh yes, we've always made sparkling. We transition. I think one of the biggest things were they really saw the quality of the vineyard because there was nothing there. Where Artesa is a goat ranch, and so the family really had the vision to, brought an architect from Barcelona to envision this. The winery is part of the mountain. You can't really tell
that's
from the
right.
road. And this very organic feel to it, but then planted the vineyard, and within the first 2 to 3 vintages, it was very clear to them that the quality was there to make great still wines besides the sparkling. So all our sparklings are estate. We currently make 4. We do a brut rosé. We do one called barrica, which is barrel fermented. It's barrel in Spanish.
Oh.
And this year we're launching our first latest gorge that I've made. In 13 was the vintage was made, spent 7 years on.
7 years.
7 years
It's a
on
big
leaves.
investment.
Wow.
Yeah, it is an
Do
investment.
you have the equipment there as well?
We do. We
So
do
you're one of the
Taraj.
few
Yes,
winemakers
we do. Yeah,
who
we do.
on
It was
site.
one of my big drives to go to Artesa that I really wanted to drink sparkling wine.
So you could drink sparkling wine?
Yes.
I love that.
It's a secret,
not
right?
to make-
Winemakers make the
Yeah.
wines they love to drink.
That's
I always
funny.
say that.
That's so true. Yeah, it wasn't to make the wines, it's to drink the wines. That's funny.
Yeah, and it's curious because I think sparkling. I mean, it's just boomed in California.
It's huge.
it's such a big thing that, and I love to go back to Spain and really learn from them there and apply a lot of techniques. I'd love to have some of the cava varietals here and to do like a
So
California
the varietal you use here for sparkling is primarily Chardonnay?
Chardonnay and Pinot Noir.
And Pinot Noir?
Yeah.
I thought maybe you use Albarino.
We've talked
Yeah?
about doing a sparkling Albarino. We've talked about it for a while, and maybe eventually we've talked about doing a pet net Albarino, but it's like just pet net sounds like
pet
so
net,
much work
yeah.
in the middle of harvest. I can't.
Petit naturel, just for people that didn't know.
Yeah, I can't put myself to do it. But to do it one in the traditional method, I think would be
Tell
curious.
people how it's made.
Well, the pet net, you ferment it just like a base wine, but then you bottle it before it finishes fermentation. So it almost, you put the crown cap and it finishes primary in bottle. And that for me, on one end, sparkling is terrifying enough because basically you have base wine and you put yeast and sugar, and if your mat isn't right, you end up with a slurry, a base wine yeast and slurry for the secondary fermentation. But a pet mat, and you have to bottle it at that precise point when it reaches, I think it's like 4 or 5 breaks. I'm not 100% sure on that.
But you also have to know what you have to guess really what the fermentation.
But imagine,
outcome will be.
I see like, what if that happens at like 8 o'clock at night? Do I have to bottle it? That's how I envision it. Probably people who make patinette are like, cringing at
Yeah, but when things are fermenting, it actually does happen at its moment in time.
Yeah, it's like port, right? Every time I've made port, we had to add the brandy at
with
2 a.m.
Every
time.
That's where you stop the
Every time.
fermentation. I know, it's funny.
But it's always like you think, it's going to happen at 2 in the afternoon. Never does. No
Well,
fail.
and you're not going to sleep anyway because you're going to want to go in and check it.
Exactly.
So-
Exactly. So I always felt like, okay, we already had so much to deal with. Let's not add another layer of stress by having to bottle this. But I don't put it past us. We've talked about maybe doing with the traditional method and not doing
I don't put it past us to do that.
Maybe. Because I have these crazy ideas always in the vineyard, as I think a lot of winemakers do when you're walking, like, and you're tasting the fruit and you just kind of, all these ideas come, I'm going to ferment it like this, do that, or, a lot of these ideas of to ferment things in a different way come from that. My team doesn't love it, but...
How many people are on your production team?
So there's myself, we have Kyle, our assistant winemaker, an enologist, a lab tech, so in winemaking per se, there's 4 of us. And then in the cellar, there are 9 people.
Nice.
And then a lot more with offices and visitor center. Our tasting room pre-COVID was pretty big, pretty large. We had to reduce a lot of it.
Well, and again, I'll say it one more time. Your tasting room is of the most interesting and beautiful. Thank you. And it is surprising because you don't expect it to be there under the mountain.
It's a destination, no question about it. So I went when it was Cordon, and then I saw Ortesa. What is that? So I drive to Napa, and I go up that hill and said, I've been here. Exactly. They had changed ownership. But
Yeah.
what a gorgeous
Yeah,
place.
thank you.
And they've done really a beautiful job at conserving the area as well as doing all the novelties. I mean, it's a great family from what I
Yeah.
Well,
understand.
they've retained the Spanish.
Absolutely, yes.
The
And
feel
still,
and
it's
the-
a Napa
Yeah.
at the same time.
Yeah,
you know, so.
yeah. And it's tricky, but it's fun. I think people really enjoy. Like for instance, the Albarino is probably one of our best sold wines at the winery. Same with the Tempranillo, because I think people really enjoy finding this varietal that you don't really,
yes.
can
Something new, something to experience.
New.
Yes.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, we have one more wine here.
Wow,
For
big
you.
nose.
Yes.
There you go. And this is the 2017. Oh, it's a red wine, so it's a blend.
Yes, it's a blend of Tempranillo and Cabernet. So when I started in 15 at the time is when we started we call it our Galatea project, which was the remodel of the tasting room. We redesigned all our labels, and really the vision of Ortesa for the next 15, 20 years. It's when I proposed this different changes I wanted to do in winemaking. And all these things happening at once, we call it the Galatea project. And so once the remodel was done, or when the project started, sorry, we really wanted a flagship wine that would kind of give us this idea of this ethos of what it is to be a Spanish winery or a Spanish-born winery in Napa Valley. And so we had this crazy idea: what if we blend the two, the Queen grape of Spain with the Queen grape with the King of California? And we thought, there's never going to work.
It sort of represents
our heritage, so
Yes.
really be Tempranillo Cabernet blend. And we sat in the blending table and we loved it. We blended 3 different blends. The first one was the one we bottled. So 2013 was our first vintage. It's at times it's been a Napa Sonoma blend. Right now it's 100% Napa Valley. And our goal is actually that it can be 100% estate eventually.
Michael, could we look at this label again, please?
Yeah, who designed that label?
I forget the name, but it was a local artist from San Francisco, and I think it's very Guernica. There's a Pablo Picasso painting that is very. I feel like there's a lot of these, but it's so, I think, Spanish.
Mm-hmm.
It is.
There's a very Spanish influence,
very Barcelona
to it. Very Barcelona, yeah.
Yes.
Well,
That's
it
what I
is.
was thinking.
That
Yeah.
is a beautiful wine.
Thank you.
Drinking makes me hungry. It's not a hint, but wow.
And so I feel it really has the beautiful aromatics of Tempranillo, that floral cassis. But then Tempranillo can have that roughness on edges, and I think the cab really rounds the back palate of the wine. And then it's kind of really at that homage to Spain. I think it's not so, I think Rioja tends to be bolder. This is a little more restrained, more like a Ribera. And then we actually, so it spends about 2 years on oak. Then when we bottle, it spends 2 more years in bottle before it's released. So this is a 2017, and was just
it's 4
it
years,
was
yeah.
released in May, end of May.
Oh, this is cute. The back says only 420 cases produced. It said Artesa, born in Barcelona, raised in Napa Valley. I love that. And how often do you go to Spain for your
At least
for work?
once a year. We've missed the last 2 years. It's perfect. We're usually in the summer, so and a lot of times we do our meeting, then we do a little winemaking trip. We've been to Jerez a few times. It's really fun. But usually once a year, I spend about a week there.
And does the whole does the team show up there? So you meet with winemakers in Spain.
All the winemakers from Spain. Paula, our winemaker in Argentina, comes too, and it's a week of tastings and bringing. Yeah, I have one of those suitcases that I bring with me with all my samples and different wines, and it's really incredible. And here we're very open with sharing experiences between winemakers, but Europe's very different. I think winemakers tend to be a little more secretive, so I feel like within the group to have this openness to share experiences, and again, the trials that we replicate, it's really fascinating to have the same trial of Tempranillo with fruit from California and fruit from Rioja, and then to taste them side by side.
And what's
It's great. It differs. We do temperature. We do with fermentation. Sometimes with native yeasts or different temperatures of fermentation. Every year we have to submit a few trials that we want to do, and by coincidence they always mesh. And then our director of winemaking, Diego, he will say, okay, you and you are going to do the same. And then to sit down and tasting and talk about it, it's incredible.
And you said there's also a wine team or winemaker from Argentina.
Argentina, yeah. So right after they built Artesa, they purchased a winery in Mendoza, or they built from the ground up, called Septima, because it was the 7th winery of the group, so they call it Septima.
Does it resemble Artesa? Or
No, it's very different. It's very traditionally built. I forget the name of this traditional building method. It's like this clay kind of tile thing, but it's absolutely gorgeous. We always say it's Photoshop because you see the Andes behind, and I haven't been yet. I've been trying
You
to.
can- so-
Yeah, I really want to. But it's absolutely gorgeous. They make the most beautiful wines, and the winemaker Paula, she actually comes sometimes for harvest and spends a week or two here working with me, and we're good friends and colleagues, and yeah, we talk all the time, and it's fun. You don't just have the Napa or the Sonoma perspective, because we all talk with friends here, but you're able to, reach
What a
out
fun
to
opportunity
different. Yeah,
for
very
you.
fun, really interesting.
To
Yeah,
have
really
all those
fun.
colleagues.
Yeah, it's
So you have
great.
access to the winemaker in Spain, obviously.
Yes.
And then
Well, a
Mendoza
lot.
and-
We have wineries in Rioja, in Ribera del Duero, in the Penedès region. We have Courtyard in San Salvador de Noya, where the headquarters are. So you have different areas within Spain too, where we can connect.
Now, does this company just focus on wine?
Yes.
Or so there are
solely
no
wine.
other.
No other. Just solely on wine.
And that's actually becoming less common as well. I mean, look at
Well, yeah,
Louis
they-
Vuitton or Chanel. There's so many other companies that are
Yeah,
now.
Whoever has money
diversifying,
can
yeah.
buy themselves into it, right?
Yeah.
So I'm assuming
that's
Europe is
really-
like that, just like here. They get bought out. The people have been doing it for 500 years. Say, okay, I think that's enough. Right?
You can put a stop to that now.
Yeah,
Wow.
that's cool. So that keeps you. You have 2 kids, a husband. I mean, I know them, so that's why I can talk about it. But
And
before
they're
I
a
say-
handful, as you know.
Well, and that's
three.
what I wanted to
husband
say,
too.
because
All three.
I didn't know if it is a Portuguese habit or whatever, or if it is you.
Yeah.
Is that the kids are 10, 12 years old, they're going to be running around. Well, we're having dinner together, and we're a bunch of other kids, and Ana will take them aside and explain to them why you shouldn't run around and yell and that stuff. Well, my parents would say, "Get out of here." She actually rationalize, and the kids are.
But her husband is a local Sonoma County guy. I love that
yes,
too.
yes, and grounds me very much.
But I understand you do also some other things besides, Teza is your baby and
Yes,
your primary
yes,
stuff.
yes.
But there are other opportunities to do different things, right?
Yes. So I do my own projects too. I work for, I started in 2012 when Naked Wines came to the United States. And we've been working closely. We started by making different Sonoma County wines. I said I want to do Portuguese varietals, and then the first one I made was a Cabernet. So I make different Cabernets from Sonoma and Mendocino counties, so small vineyards from Moon Mountain, Pine Mountain,
Nice
and I'm going to
fruits.
do an Alexander Valley this year. And then Portuguese varietals. I found this incredible vineyard in Amador County, and I do a Touriga Tempranillo blend, a port wine from there. And then in 2019, I started making wines from Portugal there too, for them too, which is really just fantastic.
So it sounds like you have plenty to do.
Oh yeah, I'm a busy lady.
You are a
I feel
very
like
busy
this
person.
this is the time I have the energy to do it. And big shout out to Matt, my husband. He's absolutely amazing. It really is a teamwork. You have to, if you have children and you're working mom, you really need the support of your partner to really help. And he really is absolutely incredible. But it's a really fun job. It's very it's a side gig, but it's very rewarding. It's very freeing. It's a great company. They've done a lot for the community. After the 2017 fires, they donated $1 million for the Inova School. They built the COVID fund for small tasting rooms that were closed during COVID, and you could sell wines through the website. And it's actually growing quite a lot. So it's been a really fun project, and to start with it, and yeah,
So good. Well, we really appreciated you
Thank
being
you.
here,
Thank
and
you.
I am thoroughly impressed with the wines that I
Thank you.
tasted, and
Thank
I
you so
assume
much.
that Artesa has a wine club.
Yes, we do. We have so we make 4 wines for distribution. Actually, now we make 6 wines for distribution, but altogether we make over 35 wines. And so, and out of
So a fun place to
20
visit.
Yes,
Plenty of
Yes.
Plenty of variety.
Yeah, plenty of variety, and a lot of these wines are DTC or wine club only. So the wine club is definitely a big part of our focus, and the DTC part of the business.
Oh, good. And I'm sure you'll resume parties soon too in that beautiful
Yes,
facility.
we're doing a big one on. It's I think for wine club we can't do this big party we envisioned, but we're doing a party to celebrate our 30th anniversary.
Yeah, another reason to
in
join the
July.
Artesa
Yes,
Wine
yes,
Club.
yes.
Well, Anna, it's been delightful.
Thank you.
And
Thank you so
interesting.
much.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Jacques,
Thank
as
you, Jacques.
always.
I met her parents, by the way, and I do have to say, the nicest people on earth.
Oh, thank you.
Wow.
Very nice.
Yeah, I don't say a lot of compliments, but
No, he doesn't. So that's
But-
Thank you. Thank you.
nicest
Thank you.
people on earth
Thank you,
are just
thank
like
you.
she is.
well, absolutely. Well, it's been a wonderful afternoon in beautiful Sonoma County in Healdsburg. Until we are back in the Courtyard, enjoy wine, enjoy life.
Cheers.